Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the One Stop Co-op Shop and Shelf Stories, a channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by with this chat with friends. And I have two friends with me. Once again, like last week, we had two people from not America. So once again, we have two people who are not from America, as Kevin helpfully pointed out. I will introduce him first. You remember him from Top 200 Solo. Hopefully you tuned in for that. He is the curator of the Geek List Top 200 from the One Player Guild. It is Kevin Erskine coming at you from
Kentucky, actually.
by way of what, Vancouver?
Me? No, Ottawa.
You're from Ottawa? Okay.
Yeah.
Where's your accent?
I've been here a long time. You want my hillbilly accent? Or
there you go.
accent? I can say out.
That's amazing.
And also on the bottom, he has a frequent guest of the Old Every Night is Game Night podcast. If you go to his YouTube channel, Rolling Solo, you've seen his face before. He'll pop in to give a nice top 10 or, check in on stuff like that. But he's appearing face-to-face for the first time on my channel. It is Adam Smith,
Sure.
the Rolling Solo. Welcome back to the show.
It's very nice to be here. Very nice to see you in person as well, because typically all our stuff is audio. We're
embracing the new trend. We're embracing the new stuff. We have to have more contact because to make up for all the nonsense that's happening as we're recording this, November 2020.
Yeah.
We don't know.
And are you going to tell people, though, that you have me here because Jeremy Howard dumped you or something?
Nice.
No such thing. Yes, Jeremy Howard was supposed to be on this call, which is perfectly fine. He is currently demoing, I think, Burn Cycle.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
With Chip Theory. So, I mean, and it's funny, like Chip Theory steals all my friends for their stuff because we all like the same stuff, and Chip Theory is so engaged with like, okay, we got to do live streams, we got to get this going, blah 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 blah. To their credit, they're really doing their thing.
Well, then they got 3 days left in their Kickstarter, so
it's I think it was like a real shorty, right?
Busy.
Yeah.
So they're always yanking my friends away.
Just stealing people away.
Kevin being a giant Bird Cycle, Chip Theory fan anyway. And Adam, you've done. I think you've done stuff for all their Kickstarters, right? For Chip Theory.
Yeah. Like I jumped in on Too Many Bones is when I really found out about them.
Right.
Was like their first Kickstarter for Too Many Bones,
right.
and that was when I was just like, I still remember that. I was like, my daughter was days away from being born, and I'm like pondering over whether I should go all in on Too Many Bones. Like, priorities, right? Like,
we in Canada, free healthcare, not so bad. But just like last year, I had Adam on the show to talk about dungeon crawlers in particular. But this year, we're going to keep it a little bit open-ended. We're not going to do a top list. Not enough for a top. This is not. We can talk about that. But we're going to talk about the year in adventure games. Adam has continued to feature some games, and Kevin has continued to watch all the content and carefully make decisions about what he's going to back and what he's not going to back. So we're going to go over that, and I have a feeling that we're really going to focus on what I think was the adventure game of the year. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but we can talk about that, which is Too Many Bones. Released a lot of extra content this year. A lot of extra stuff landed. So we'll definitely get into that a little bit later in the episode. Sound like a plan, guys?
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right. But first, we were just kind of getting going. We were really kind of like getting into it. And I'm like, you know what? Record. Let's do this.
Start now.
Adam was kind of going over his process of going through your games. You get a lot of big honking games, speaking of adventure games and other stuff too. But you were getting into like how you manage the churn. So I'm really interested in that. I'm really interested like what you keep and what you look at and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a struggle for sure.
The struggle is real.
Because it's a good struggle to have, because it's nice to have, you're always interested in the next thing, right? It's just constant. But
I was going to say boo-hoo.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I find like the thing that's the most interesting now is when something new comes out, I look at it like, what is this going to replace that I currently own? Like
Right.
that's the first thing I think of,
Right.
rather than like, oh, I'm just going to add it to the heap kind of thing. It's like, what's going to leave the second this thing comes in, or what does this game do better than the last iteration? So like even right now, I'm playing a simplistic game in Zombicide right now that's been around. There's many iterations of that thing, but it's like I let go of all my prior entries, even though I had everything. I just like slowly just was like, nope, it's all got to go. And you know, and it's like, but every new one comes in and you try it and you go, okay, they changed some things, they made some things better. And like with the Night of Living Dead, for instance, the one thing I really liked about that one was that they put it all into one box. I was like, when does that ever happen for a Zombicide game where you can actually like literally pull a single box out and play it, even if it's a simple game? And simple games are hard to find these days. Like most games
Especially
coming
if
out
you
are
want,
like
adventure and
30, 40, 50 page rule books. I'm like, you know what? A Zombicide every once in a while is nice. It's like,
Yeah, there's something to be said for that.
Are you a Zombicide guy, Kevin?
I have Black Plague with like 3 boxes of stuff.
Yeah.
yeah. That's the thing. Like I used to have Black Plague and Green Horde, and then of course, you know, the second edition of Zombicide was on Kickstarter, and Night of Living Dead was on Kickstarter. I was like, okay, here we go again. If I jump in on these, I've got to let this other stuff go, right? Or I don't go in on it. One of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So like,
I think the worst
constant.
still is Shadows of Brimstone. Still my worst, where I have I don't know.
Good one.
I don't. I got a trunk and like 6 boxes, and it's unreal. And I've sold probably $200-300 worth of it. I still have way too much, way too much.
I definitely tend to I love adventure games, but I tend to not keep them around. And I tend to not get too deep in any one adventure game because, like you guys said, it can explode and you just have too much stuff that you want to play and prefer. So it's like, I'll get Sword and Sorcery. It's like, okay, I bang that out, move that on. Here comes, whatever. And I only tend to keep around maybe 2 or 3, to be honest with you. Like I'll have like my one more strategic one, and I'll have my one more honking dice rolly, whatever. And that's kind of how I categorize it. Do you have like categories for your different adventure games, like this flavor, that flavor, the other flavor, or is it just like a kind of a bigger mush?
For me, it's probably a bigger mush. I don't have a storage problem at all. So kids are all gone.
Storage problem.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
And those things are so hard to trade or sell because they're so big and they're so heavy. So, but generally, if there's a game, I say, you know what, I will replay this sometime. I'll keep it. Otherwise, I try to trade it. Yeah. But it's hard. I mean, one thing I have been doing is with Kickstarters lately. Probably the last 3, 4, 5 Kickstarters, I'm back in the base game only and none of the expansions because I find I just don't get around to playing them.
Right.
I move on to some other game, especially if an expansion comes 2 years later. By then, I maybe have moved on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's I'm on the side of the spectrum where my brain always tries to complete the set. Like, it's like it's a really bad thing to have inside of you that you can't just get the base game because you feel like you missed out on something. Like it's definitely ingrained inside of me, and I don't know if Kickstarter's at fault or I'm at fault as a human.
What if the expansion box has like the better scenario?
Exactly.
I don't want to be stuck with your original scenario. Get out of here.
That's definitely, but there has been the odd time where I've been like, okay, I'll pick something up and I'll just grab the base because I'm not sure on it. Like I'm kind of hesitant. I'm like, I don't know. So I'll give it a shot. I don't need everything, but it seems like I'm either all in or I'm not in at all. It seems to be the more of the 2 choices. But
yeah, I think I just go mostly with the base game because I find when they do stretch goals and stuff, that's where you're getting more bang for your buck. And it's like, you might pay $100 for the base game and an expansion $60. And it's like, well, wait, that makes no sense.
That's true. Yeah. When you're talking about those adventure games, it's like, here's 1 tile, 10 more miniatures to go into your 100 miniatures and 20 tiles you already got.
Right. So I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. You guys bid that up. Let's get more stretch goals. Everybody buy that.
But it's exclusive. It has a bigger orc.
Yeah, but see, I don't have that. I am not a completionist. I have no issue there whatsoever. Doesn't bother me if I'm missing something.
All right. So, we're talking about like how we're approaching adventure games, but Ed, let's get into 2020, the year in adventure. So this has been a difficult year. right? I mean, on many fronts. I don't have to, kind of go through the ways, but just to kind of, like we're coming towards the year end, the people are looking for, well, how was the year and all that kind of thing. And I figured, let's break it up into sections and we'll talk about adventure. Just like in this particular area in general, like, we just didn't, like projects launched and like we have a lot of projects that are kind of launching like right at the end of 2020. People are kind of like anticipating stuff, but like the stuff that was back in 2019, I looked at my backlist, it's abominable. I have a lot of back projects and they are all delayed.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Different ones, adventure games and little puzzly games and my IP games and everything. But I think adventure games in particular, because they're so big and they require a lot of plastic manufacturing and the shipment. And like I got my Alter Quest box a couple of days ago and it was chock full of crap. There's so much stuff in there. But anyway, but there were some, right? There were a couple of things going on. So we had the master of adventure, Adam Smith, over here to maybe break down a couple of the things that really stuck out. And Kevin, I know you perused a couple of the YouTubes and everything, stuff that like leapt out at you, even if you didn't play it. Something that you found interesting. So I'll start with Adam. Run down some stuff.
Wow, you're 100% right. Like I'm literally looking at my list of stuff on Kickstarter because it's a good way for me to like keep things in order in my brain. But you're right in terms of how many different adventure games. Like I think we were saying this just before we got on, where it's like a lot of these big hulking adventure titles seem to all have been pushed off into 2021. The big ones, the ones like Oathsworn and like these large, oversized, big time campaign type games have been all moved over, and there's tons of them. Like I'm going through my list here and I'm like, I can't wait for half these things to show up just to see if they're going to live up to whatever they proposed in the Kickstarters and stuff like this. And of course,
especially Oathsworn promised a lot.
Yeah, like that's one that was interested in, but at the same time too, like I also like, even though I do enjoy narrative games, campaign games, and things like that, I do have a lot of other games that are different in terms of the actual make and the mechanisms inside of them and stuff like that. So I found myself last year, maybe even this year, backing more of an even 50-50 on stuff rather than as heavy as I used to do on adventure gaming. So that's kind of nice, but there's some big ones like Solomon Kane's one that's another massive one that's supposed to be a big deal. Again, not probably coming out till next year sometime.
Right.
You got like Ryan Lockett's Sleeping Gods. Like there's tons of people waiting for that because all of his prior iterations were everything leading up to Sleeping Gods coming out and being like one of these grand adventure games with freedom. Because every one of his games prior to that were always like, here's your little area, you can move around freely inside of here and explore some maps and things like that, but you're not really free because you're still constrained by the game. You have to like get certain objectives, you have to do things in order to win the game, whereas Sleeping Gods is going to be more like, here you go. Like go have fun. And I think a lot of people are waiting for that one too.
Anything that you noticed, Kevin, just like perusing? Well, did you like looking at 2019 Kickstarters that haven't delivered yet or undelivered Kickstarters, since we're on that topic? Anything that any particular waiting for?
Well, Etherfields, that's supposed to be here soon. I think they started shipping, but I haven't got a notice or anything, so that's supposed to be coming.
So Etherfield, let's pause there because that's just delivering, and it got a huge.
I'm glad you brought that up.
What's that?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a perfect one.
Right. So that one actually delivered. It was late.
Well, somewhere, yeah. Some people have gotten it. I haven't seen mine yet, but so that's one. That was one of those ones. That was an impulse buy. I saw it. It was right at the end of the Kickstarter, and I'm like, wow, $4 million. That's a lot of plastic, and I better get that. And I knew. I still don't know anything about it except it looks gorgeous. So I thought, and it looks different. So I thought, let's get this. And worst case is I can trade it maybe.
Break it down, Adam. What are we in for?
I don't know. Like from the prototype that I played, it changed there was quite a few small, like it seems like small stuff, and I don't have it. I'm same as Kevin. I'm still waiting for it. It'll come one day and it'll probably shock me when it lands on my porch because it looks like a coffin, if not even bigger than that. But like I'm more excited from the standpoint of I think what drew me to that project in the first place was the fact of like the environments. Like there's so many fantasy games, there's so many, you could put all these games into certain categories, but when you talk about Etherfields, you're talking about a dream world. And sure, there's a bunch of dream worlds out there for board games. Like Kingdom Death Monster could potentially be in that realm too, where it's like, what are you in? A real life state, an alter? Like, what is going on really in this world?
Yeah. There was one called The Shared Dream that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was like with the people become the anima and they kind of like switch between the hero and the regular person. That one was interesting.
Yeah, and I find it's like it definitely allows. I could see why they went with that theme just from an artistic side of things, because it's almost like they could take their hands off and say, "Go nuts!" Like everything's okay. Like, make the craziest miniatures you want, because no one's going to have any boundaries. There's no like, oh, they has to be an orc with an axe and he has to look like this.
Right.
It's just no. If you want to have some weird cat on a tricycle going down this, like that's fine.
With a chainsaw. There you go.
Yeah, with a chainsaw. Put a chainsaw there too.
I was thinking of what got delivered this year, and Splice and Dice for Too Many Bones might be. It's the only big one I can think of that is even close to an adventure game. And like you said, I'm waiting on Solomon Kane next year. That looks very different. I'm really looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Frosthaven. I don't know if you call that adventure or dungeon crawler, but that
it definitely fits
in there.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm spending over $100.
Yeah, I'd say
close to an adventure. Yeah,
the expansion from Madara. I'm looking forward to that. I'm trying to think what else. Isofarian Guard looked good. I didn't back it, but I may regret that one, not getting that one.
Oh my God! What a it used to be called Time of Legends, the Lucky Duck game. I think they crossed with Mythic Games.
Oh yeah.
Now it's just Destinies, and that held them up. Sworn, you mentioned Aeon's Trespass.
Yep.
It's look at next year's this episode is going to be banging.
Oh, it's going to be insane. Like I am scrolling through this right now, and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff coming. Like Shadows of Brimstone Adventures is in there too.
Oh yeah, I don't need any more of that. But yeah, like Aeon's Trespass. I remember that was out. That was at the same time as Isofarian Guard, and I think Solomon Kane. They were all at the exact same time,
right?
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay,
guys, please.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's getting nuts.
Well, it's like right now, the ones that Darkest Dungeon just ended, and Burn Cycle's on, and Nova Aetus, another one, and it's crazy. Oh, I know another one I thought of that did deliver, but I'm cheap and went for one wave shipping is Tainted Grail.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Tainted Grail came out, I think, the end of 2019. That they got that box. That's another one that should have been 2020 with like the Wave 2, or with everything. I also am cheap and got the Wave 2.
So I'm looking forward to that one.
Today I actually got Tidal Blades in the mail.
Okay,
finally. Like that one showed up, so that's one that would definitely fit in the adventure category. I really, that one I think I backed solely on just the look and feel and the vibe of what they were providing, and then also just the mechanisms in the game, the dice, the production value of it looked insane. Mm-hmm. So I kind of jumped in thinking that this could be something that I don't have in my collection. Like kind of gives me a vibe of like, even though like it's like a Monkey Island vibe, but not the first couple. Like the third one where they're like, everything's cartoonish and stuff like that. I'm like, that looks really cool. So I'm hoping that one's really good.
I demoed Tidal Blades at PAX. Like the
nice.
The small version, like where it's just basically kind of like the Euro stuff, but you can definitely tell with like, they had the little audiences and you kind of like bouncing, influence between the audiences. And Tidal Blade's really good.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that one.
So so it hasn't been a lot. Is what we're hearing. We're hearing a lot of like wistful stuff. But Adam's channel has been going strong with different lists and whatever he is getting to the table. So we should probably get over to the one game that did land. And I don't have a lot to say about it. I played the base game of this years ago. I wasn't that impressed. It was okay. It was good. I'm not going to say it's bad.
That's the best.
So podcast listeners, you used to this to the top 200. Kevin I make Kevin just do head nods and head shake.
Well, I just keep thinking of your other tastes, and I'm like, okay, he's
it's like
he likes Oni Rim, so
I'm just not.
There you go.
Okay, so we're talking about Too Many Bones, and so tell me what delivered this year.
Splice and Dice expansion is what came with the Trove chest, the giant, gorgeous box for putting it all in. So there you go. You can have all your Too Many Bones in one box.
Which, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys were mentioning about like storage. I think my big project that I had was Sentinels of the Multiverse, and I was really thankful for that rig. I would lift it, but I don't want to like strain my back. It's right now it's on the bottom of my shelf over here. But that's probably the one that I was like, okay, I'll get everything for this. It's very rare that I do it. I go that far.
Yeah, I have the Sentinels box and this one side by side on the shelf, on the bottom shelf.
Oh,
On the bottom
nice,
shelf.
nice. Is that the going with the door shelf or?
No, I have just standard garage shelves.
I see. I see.
No calyx, and my wife won't let me have games.
I was thinking that because it was lower on the shelf, that it's like I do that with my games when I put them on the shelf. I'm like the ones I like the most are up high, and then they go substantially forward down, and then so I'm like whenever I want to sell something, get rid of something, I look at the bottom, I'm like yeah.
No, I'm more worried in this case about the shelf bending and breaking.
Oh no, that's not good.
Those two boxes are heavy.
Yeah,
those are. When you fill
my shelf to go is like I actually bought a new shelf for a shelf to go because like my regular shelves were like bursting, and then I would put like the games that I wanted to leave in a chair, but then the chair got really small for all the games I wanted it to go. So I just bought a shelf, and like I look at that shelf and I'm like, oh, it's almost like the Island of Misfit Toys on that shelf. It's like, oh. I
was going to ask.
I can guarantee you that Too Many Bones is not on the Island of Misfit Toy shelves for at least Kevin. So
that's
please
good.
educate me, guys. That. Evangelize me. Tell me what is so good about what am I missing by not getting into this project full board?
Well, what didn't excite you?
That's a good question.
I can rehash my original reviews. Okay, so so this was off the base box. I think it was only 4 gear locks in the base box.
Yeah.
And at the time I played it, it was still kind of going into its like. I mean, the Carlsons, they knew. They just kind of like got started over there, and the rules were rough, right? And it was hard to kind of know, especially like their games are so intricate with like the spacing and like how the movement. It's such a constrained space to move, so it's like you have to be really exact about what exactly this move means and that move. So it's like I kind of had a rough time with that. Gameplay wise, I was really frustrated with how infrequently you could use a special dice.
Yeah.
Because what happened is
you
get them, you roll them, and then you get the bone, and then they're either stuck as a bone or like you'd lose it. You have to like kind of buy it again. And I'm a guy, I don't care. Like I'm not messing around. Like I want to be special.
He wants to roll special dice all the time. Ultimate power.
Ultimate power.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I hear you, and I think the argument to that is that the battles are generally short. Often you're only fighting 4 things, and so rolling that one die once in a battle I find is okay. I mean, if I have 3 or 4 skills, it's picking the strategic time of when to use that skill to the maximum effect, and and then picking the skills to decide, because you never get all of them, no matter what. No matter how big a campaign, you're not getting all of them. So knowing what to pick, I think it just adds to it. They've changed some stuff. Like one of the characters that just came recently, Dart, has a mechanism where you can get some of your dice back. So you can use a special skill and then do something, and then you can get it back. And actually, lab rats have the same thing. Somebody's got an ability to return a card back to you or died to you. Or no, I think that's on Dart also. So yeah, there's not a lot of that. But when you play, you're probably playing 5-6 battles before you face the tyrant. So that's 5 or 6 times you are getting to use that die. I mean, think of
But I've rolled like 30. So like among the 30 rolls that I've rolled, 6 of them are with the special dice, and the rest are with
attack and defense. Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's bad. Not. I mean, I 7 out of 10. I was happy to play it. I'm happy to I'll tell people this is a good game. It's just for me, I you know, I don't, you know, like, I guess, you know, maybe I was into fourth edition D&D at the time, where it's like there was no such thing as a basic attack, or like that was like the last option. You know,
Yeah.
you're always attacking with something cool.
I guess on the
Yes.
opposite, I guess on the opposite side of the coin, like I look at it and I'm like, maybe I don't know. There's a lot of venture games where you have like one special ability, or maybe two
Right.
or three, and you're just kind of recycling through them. I guess with this, the bonus is like if this wasn't on, if they weren't dice and they were all cards, the amount of different special abilities you have would be ridiculous. I think most people, I don't think people probably even notice how much power there is behind each of these gear locks, like in terms of how many different options you have as you go down. I think people particularly play the game and they like find the path they like when they're unlocking the dice, and they're like, this is what I'm going to use forever. They're like, this is, I'm going to min max it and find this path. This will be the path
Yeah.
that like guarantee me to knock out the tyrant almost every single time. Or I like this one the most because it gives me the best odds. But I do think there's a lot of your point is really valid though, because I never really thought about it from the standpoint of how often you roll your special die, right? Like you get caught up in the gameplay of what dice you're going to use and when.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was weird because when it first landed on Kickstarter, I looked at it and I was like, it's definitely looks wise and how it plays on the table was different than most things I'd seen. Hoplomachus obviously existed, but I'd never played that, so I didn't have any kind of gauge on that to even compare. But they obviously stole some of that, you know, play with the battle mat straight from Hoplo in terms of how they implemented their skills and things like that. But I found it was weird. Like the weirdest thing for me was when I got the game for the first time and opened it up and started playing it. And I could see the things you were talking about, like certain rules were tough to find. Or like, you kind of be like, okay, in this situation, how does this ability really work if it's bouncing off these three other rules?
Right.
That stuff would happen. But the weirdest thing was like the crazy up and down, like there's a lot of games where it seems like you could say the game was positively received, negatively received, or in the middle. But Too Many Bones was very much kind of like a wave. Like I couldn't ever figure out, like, was it really popular or was it like it was not liked by others for certain reasons and stuff like that. It never really had a middle ground. In my opinion,
if you
anyway,
could afford to play it, if you had somebody that could afford to play it, you probably loved it.
Yeah, it seemed like that.
Or you bought it and you may have not liked it, but you spent so much on it, so like you're not like turned into this game is garbage. Give me my money.
Well, that's
back.
the thing, because I remember putting out I put out maybe a top 10 list, because this is back in 2017 or something like that, right? So I think I put it on my list. It wasn't my top, but I think it was up in the top 3 or 4 or something. And then when Undertow released, Undertow ended up being the number 1 from that year, because I thought it was the best entry point. It's almost like Jaws of the Lion for Gloomhaven. It's like the best pared down version of the game to get you in without you spending the most amount of money, basically.
Right.
So I kind of thought but it was weird that this year there seemed to be like this huge fire around it.
Yeah.
Like so many people come out of the woodworks, and it went from being like, hey, we've all known about Too Many Bones for years. And then this year it's just like, everyone's just like, the hype level is like off the charts. And I'm kind of like, it's confusing because I'm like, the game's been good for a long time. It's not like it was hidden away somewhere.
One thing I noticed when the Cloudspire Kickstarter was on, Chip Theory lets you buy other games in their catalog and add them to your purchase to get free shipping and that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
a lot of people were getting Too Many Bones when Cloudspire came out, and then the expansion came out, and they're selling more Too Many Bones on that Kickstarter, and it just keeps multiplying. Then when they came out with the last one with Splice and Dice, I mean, there was a lot of people getting in on that. But Jason, to your argument about the dice, if you look at they actually call it a dice building RPG. And I always think back to, I mean, you probably played Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Oh, sure.
You're a wizard. You got what, one spell that you use for the entire adventure?
The most powerful spell.
I mean, you're holding on to your fireball.
You have one trick.
One time.
Well, it's an excellent point, because like, I mean, I think what people like is, I mean, it's an adventure game, but it gave you that kind of like the abstract movement, right? I mean, and people really got into like how much design they put into those 16 spaces, because it's not that big.
Yeah,
right?
that's impressive to me. Really impressive.
It's so unique how they were able to, like, however many bosses in the base game and however many bosses kind of came along the way, and and all the mobs that are different and all the little, like, obviously there's a big icon barrier. So like, this one has block 1 and this one, but like once you kind of get past that icon barrier, then like it played out so well on the board that people didn't mind. Like they took that old school D&D approach of like, okay, you get one magic missile and then and then
Right.
but
Yeah.
the combat itself is so interesting to people,
Right.
not enough
Right.
to me, but like, is that how you would approach it, Kev?
Absolutely. And I think, when you put 4 baddies, as they call them, on the board, you look up the keywords, and I have to pull out the sheet for almost every time I have to pull up the sheet, and see, especially the new ones, and see what does it mean. And then so everybody has to understand what these things can and can't do, or, like if they have break, what you don't want to do. And then, so then you start thinking of your strategy, and it's different. I mean, you could take 2 of those guys off the board and put 2 other ones in there, and you have a completely different fight. All of a sudden, you got things hitting you 2 people at a time with ranged poison, and that's so different than someone rolling 3 attack dice against you. And it just changes the fight so much just by that. And then when you go to the gear locks, one of the complaints is you look at a Gearlocks page and there's like a whole list of things what all the dice do. Each one might have 25 different things you have to know. But the key is you play that one Gearlock 2 or 3 times and you'll get to know it. You learn the intricacies of how to be efficient with it. And then, if you've got everything, then you've got, I don't know, 15 more that you can try, and they're all so
how are we looking for Gearlocks? With everything, how are we looking for how many options we have?
Do the final count. I think, and and then there's the Gearlock Child as well, which is not really a Gearlock, but you got the.
I have 12 Gearlocks. I mean, counting the lab rats as one.
Mm-hmm.
So 12 of them. I have them all. Yeah, I mean, and they're so different, and it's funny because I was talking to some other people the other day, and they were talking about who their top 3 are and bottom 3 are, and it's amazing that 2 or 3 people, their number 1 is my absolute least favorite.
Yeah,
and their least favorite is like one of my top 3, and it's play style matters, or what you want to do. It's just. They're so different, and there's so much to each one of them. And then the bosses really change things up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point about the characters. Like, there definitely is a huge swing. I remember seeing many polls over the years for like, what's your favorite Gearlock? And they're always just all over the place.
Yeah.
There's usually a couple that are pretty high up there that people have found to be pretty solid across the board against tyrants in general. But everyone seems to have different favorites and stuff like that. For some really weird reason, Gasket was the one that connected with me.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is about that. Maybe it's just because he doesn't look like anybody else, but he also doesn't act like anyone else in terms of how he uses dice. Like, it can be an absolute random mess. Like, it can actually, if you build him in a way that it creates that randomization.
What's his shtick?
Well, it's yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the biggest thing, he's a mech, so
yeah,
a whole bunch of statuses he's immune to. So poison, you just laugh. It's like, go ahead, hit me with poison.
No big deal.
With weaken, hit me with these things. It doesn't matter. But then I think what Adam's talking about, he's got these 3 dice, these programming dice.
So funny.
You can unlock them, and you can roll them every turn, Jason. So you'll love them.
So that's why
you
you
roll
love them. Yeah,
you roll them, and you have to use all 3 dice no matter what. And so it could be like a move, hit something, and something else. Well, and you can use them in any order, but if you got to hit something and you can't get next to someone else, you're hitting one of your guys. And, and it does different things, but to me, it's just fun because you do get to roll those dice every single time.
Yeah.
But you got to manage his steam.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I loved him from the standpoint that he's there to help. It's like he's semi co-op. He's there to help you, but he may not. He may just run away and do nothing. But then it's funny because you're like strategizing, like, I need to take these things down. I need to do it in this amount of turn. And then, like you said, roll a couple dice, and all of a sudden it's like, okay. But then there's other times where you roll the dice and he does exactly what you need to do, and it's like the best feeling ever.
Yeah, then he's like a super tank or something. So, and that's what I think they've done so well with. So, I mean, like, for someone like you want to roll a bunch of dice, special dice every time. He's perfect.
Where is Gasket? Is he in Slice and Dice?
He came with He was the expansion
Undertow
character with Undertow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did Spice and Dice add? Is it just like more Too Many Bones, or was there
No,
some kind of like something in the magic sauce of that particular expansion that got people excited?
Go ahead. Do you want to explain it, Adam? Or
For Spice and Dice, to be totally honest, I have not dived in deep enough to be able to explain that yet.
Well,
that's the only Too Many Bones entry that I haven't even done videos on yet.
Oh.
So I just finished playing it. There's two parts to it. There's what they call Nobulus Apprentice Program, and I haven't played that. That's more like a mini game. You don't use the battle map at all. You don't use gear locks at all. Okay. You're more just trying to build your own tyrant, and then you fight another tyrant at the end. That's a whole different game, and I haven't played that. That's like very different than regular Too Many Bones. But the build a tyrant part, you play regular Too Many Bones with a regular. You decide whether you're going to go for a 6, 8, or 10 day adventure, and then you roll these dice that will basically you put them on a map, and every time you kill a baddie, they go in a certain spot. And let's say the dice I rolled and I put it in there as attack dice. Well, if the attack of the two baddies that are side by side is more at the end of the battle is more than the tyrant I've already got, then his number of attack dice goes up. So the order you kill things in the regular fight affects how you build your tyrant. So I might put a range dice at the top, and I'm like, oh dear, I do not want to face a tyrant with range. So I'm going to make sure that my first two guys I kill don't have range in their thing, so that they don't make my tyrant that I'm building go up in range. Or I might roll the skill die, and so whoever falls beside that skill die is going to get whatever skill the baddie's got is going on to my tyrant, up to 3 different skills. So it really adds another layer. You don't just immediately just kill the first thing. You've got to think about, well, if I kill this here, that means my tyrant's going to go up. He's going to get an extra defensive dice, or he's going to get an extra attack, or his initiative goes up. So maybe I'll take 1 extra round of damage from that guy so I can kill this guy first and put him in that slot. So it really adds a lot for that. And I found it's an extra layer for sure of not complexity, but you got to think. You have to, while you're trying to survive, you're also trying to minimize not creating something that you can't kill down the road.
Right. I've seen pictures of people creating their tyrants, and I've seen some of the ridiculous stacks of chips and everything else.
Oh.
It's like, I'm like, what is that?
I mean, actually, I don't like it. That's the kind of thing that just doesn't appear in other adventure games. Like, to be honest with you,
right.
Think of like the
very different.
So, like Gloomhaven, it's awesome, and there's a lot of like hand manipulation, but you don't need to be affecting the board a lot. Like, I mean, it's a very static thing. Like, they'll just give you the board. It's like, okay, here, beat this as much as you can. Same thing with like a Mage Knight or like the bigger, more thinkier ones, and like that big honking adventure ones. Then it's like, it's almost like they can't make it too complicated because it's so swingy. So it's like, we're not going to throw this big complicated thing at you because you might just roll nothing.
Right.
Like a Madara. Yeah. Madara is wonderful, and it's mostly there for like flavor. It's like it's a flavor engine, basically. Yeah. Maybe I'm being too mean, but have you played Madara? How do you play Madara, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. Definitely.
When did that deliver? This year or last year?
Last year.
And last year, but for Canadians, it was like, I don't remember. It was one of those ones where it straddled the end of the year or something silly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Am I being too mean by calling it a flavor engine?
Yes. Yes.
I think so.
Well, in the sense of like, I don't like what Kevin was talking about with like, the crafting of your enemy.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to get that level of like tactical depth.
No.
I just think there's so many adventure games that, or campaign games in general, that just can their enemies. They're just like, we're going to build this enemy, like you said. They got to fit this certain mold because by the time your character gets to X level, they need to be able to. It needs to be somewhat of a decent fight back and forth.
Right. Well, and I think what this does that's just so good is that, I mean, there's 2 things. One, if you said, "Hey, build your own enemy," people wouldn't like it. They wouldn't enjoy it if they just built. If you just say, "Hey, just give them how much hit
into
point."
Yeah.
If you just said, "Just give them as many hit points and defenses you want," nobody would do it. It just wouldn't be. So this being part of the game. The other thing this does is you don't know exactly what your tyrant's going to do. You don't know for sure if he's going to have poison or not have poison, or have a big attack, or have a lot of defense, or have thick skin. And so as you go through the days approaching the tyrant, you really have to start looking at your special dice and saying, okay, I don't think I need this. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to need something to solve this problem now. Now you've got to kind of switch in midstream and trying to make you be better to face this thing you're creating. And I think that's where it really makes it interesting. It makes, like if you play the same gear lock every time, I'm sure there's some people who build it fairly, they've got a certain way they like to build it. They'll just do the same thing all the time, within reason. I think it depends on the tyrant. But this one, you got to be a little more flexible.
You had a thought.
Yeah.
No, I was at the very beginning of what he was saying there. He just, for some weird reason, when he was explaining what he was saying, it's just myth came into my head when he said like giving you a bunch of stuff and then just like in terms of like an end game, like myth is just like, here's a box of stuff, here's some rules, and you just kind of put that together and figure it out.
I was thinking.
We all know how that went.
Yeah. I was thinking. Now I will still say I still love myth. I have high.
I didn't give it a fair shake. I will completely, like, I got it used. I put it on the table. I opened the rule book and I started reading. I think I got like 4 pages in, and and it was just like, I lost the why am I playing this piece. Like 4 pages in, I was like, why am I playing this? What is the driver here? And that then I was like, oh shoot, now I'm gonna have to struggle my way into.
It's a shame because
myself.
There's a really good hand management and the darkness side of it that is so good in myth. But that's the poster child for the worst written rules, and there was just so much missing. People complain about too many.
You're right,
bones,
though.
and
it had lots of potential. It probably still does have a lot of potential if somebody gets.
Well, Ulysses is coming out with a new version, I think, next year.
I have heard.
So
this,
hopefully that fixes
year?
it,
or just straight to retail.
I think that it's going straight to resale. From what it's hard to say. I won't say that. I don't know. But I think too many bones. You know what you said about the rule book is true. Yeah. I don't think the actual core rules are that hard or that vague.
What's the exceptions? It's all the little wrinkles.
Well, it's the gear locks and the cards and the dice and the tyrant and all the everything that enters the game has a different rule. Everything, every baddie, true. And but that's what gives it to me the replayability and gives it the you will never have 2 games the same with that, which that's a definite plus.
I think that's why I enjoy it so much. Is like most adventure games, you get, I don't know, it depends on what you're talking about. Like if you're talking Gloomhaven or something like that, you got a whole deck of cards. So yeah, you could feel like you could explore that for a while because you're unlocking cards, adding to it. So you may not see the same character builds exactly the same way. Stuff similar to Too Many Bones. But I think the Too Many Bones, the thing that's really interesting is just like how, like we were saying already, just how much they packed into every character. So like there's a lot of games that will bring additional heroes into the equation, but you don't really feel like they add that much. And like Zomicide's a great example. It's like, here's one special ability and a new character. Like that's literally the basis of it. Whereas with Too Many Bones, it's like, here's, a handful of dice that all do different things, have tons of rules to them. And like Kevin was saying, it's like, you take that same gear lock and do the same run against a different tyrant, you're going to have a totally different experience every single time you do it.
So maybe like, it's almost like, because you're asking the question, Adam, like, why Too Many Bones this year? Because it's been out for a couple years. It's been good. Yeah. Maybe it took the community like 3 years to understand all the
rules. Maybe, but like I honestly was confused because I was like, hold on a second. I'm like everyone, because I'd seen like obviously I purchased. I was one of those people who like bought the game and then was like, oh, I gotta say it's people are like, you gotta say it's good because you spent all this money on it, and I'm like, no, I actually enjoyed it. But then I heard people saying that it, like you were saying, there's issues with the rules, and that's reasons why I kind of stay away from it, or it's overproduced and stuff like that. But I just found it weird that it seemed like the people kind of did like an about face, like people that were kind of like, nah, not really, are now going like, Too Many Bones is the best game ever. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm just like, what happened? Like, and it wasn't Undertow, because Undertow hit and nobody really spoke up about it besides it being an easier entry point into the series and stuff like this. And then of course the battle map got more entertaining because there's stuff on the sides, and now you got like extra placement areas and stuff. But it was weird. It was weird because Splice and Dice, I don't think that's what did it. Like, I could be wrong, but
no.
I think honestly, I say it as a joke. Like, it took 3 years to understand the rules, but like in terms of how, like, you know, understanding the complexity, how the complexity unlocks all this depth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It may have taken the community that long to realize, oh my God, all this stuff will unlock like the best time, you know?
Well, I think you get a lot of people who get the game, they try it, they're like, I don't know. And then they hear people talking about it and they go, well, I'll give it another try. And then, you know, maybe they hear a recommendation of, oh, I love this character. So they try a different character. Maybe they never tried one.
Right.
And they understand that one. And so they go to their game group and, you know, 4 guys play and they each take the same character a couple of times in a row. And all of a sudden they're not looking up the sheets. They're not doing things. They're talking about strategies. They're going through it and it's picking up. And now they're like, well, let's add 2 more characters, and adding 2 more onto it's not a big deal. And I'm wondering if that's kind of what it is. Like you said, it takes a while, and maybe they're like, well, it's okay, but it's only got this little 4x4 map.
Yeah.
And maybe it benefited from the fact that we just didn't get a lot of other competition. You know, like this year, I mean, we went through a whole year of adventuring, and it was all the stuff that we were going to get delivered.
The other thing I wonder too about Too Many Bones is like, I wonder how many people tried Patches as their first character. Like, not like as a knock against Patches, like specifically, but like Patches is a very like supportive character. Yeah. And I think it's also the one they reference in the rule book too. So it's like, I wonder if a lot of and I wonder if a lot of people like played Patches and went, okay, so I basically just heal myself and roll swords and shields.
Yes.
And that's essentially it. And I roll my special dice, which gives me more health. And you know, I could see someone easily playing through a full game of that to the Tyrant and going, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Patches was my first one. You're right.
Not that Patches is bad, because he's amazing in a group, but maybe by itself, it could be the worst gear lock to start with.
Think about the ones that came with the base game, right? So you get Patches, like you said. Picket is defense, defense, defense.
Exactly.
I mean, you're a tank. Then you get Tantrum, who's complicated, and I love Tantrum.
He's awesome.
But if you don't know how to use Tantrum, he's dead. He's going to die fast.
Is Tantrum the one with like bombs?
No, Tantrum's the one that builds up rage.
Okay,
But he is a one-man wrecking crew. He heals. He has range. He has melee. No, he's phenomenal. He can take out. He can one-shot a 20-pointer. You know, so then you got that, and then the other one was Boomer. And Boomer's the one I hate. Because Boomer, like I watched people play.
I love how everyone has the one gear like they hate.
I am so like I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kevin, but like it was like you guys just summed up my experience. Like I played with Patches and I'm like, oh, this is okay. Then I played with Boomer and I'm like, this sucks. Where are my dice?
Right.
Awesome.
The problem with Boomer is you're building up. Like I watched a game some people playing the other day online, and he did nothing for like 7 days worth. I mean, very little. He'd do some range stuff, but he was building up and building up. They got to the boss fight, and he took out the Tyrant and 2 other 5-pointers on his first turn. I mean, it was just an absolute massacre. He was rolling 12 dice or something. It was just insane what he was doing. And that's what Boomer does. Yeah. But up until that point, you're carrying him. Or her, whatever.
Yeah.
So you think about it, those are the base ones. And then they really came out with a lot of variety in the next gear locks. And I think that's where the game really changed. Gilly comes out. You've got a range character who's got pets. Or companions they call them, which is really neat. Nugget's just okay, then the undertow ones, they get a lot more complicated.
Tank was pretty cool. That was a Tank. I love one, like
Tank.
The bots and everything.
But that's what they did, though, is the ones that are really interesting are complicated. Tink is complicated.
It's true.
Duster is kind of complicated. Stanza is really complicated. So they made it more complicated, but if you learn them, they're great. They're so much fun to play.
That's the thing. I wonder whether, I mean, again, like they're obviously trying to balance the game. When it first came out, it's like, here's the 4 pillars of what will work to get you to the end of the game. But I wonder if a part of that kind of backfired in terms of like you go so deep on each of the gear locks that you can only include 4 in the box because you're talking multiple dice, multiple mats. These things are not cheap. You can't just put 8 gear locks in the box and have it be like
everyone has custom dice and a whole custom tray and everything.
Yeah. So that that could be a con on their end, like in terms of the production value actually starting to kind of impact the flexibility, replayability of the game in general.
But I think some people would have thrown it out if they got, Tink and Stanza and, some of those right off
if you just Stanza to start with, you'd be like, no.
Well, and then I'm playing right now with the Lab Rats and Dart, and those are crazy. Yeah. It's so different. You don't even think it's the same game when you play with these two, and it's just so different. And I think that's what people have loved. But even the 4,
such a good game.
Even the first 4, if you're playing with other people, the strategies on that 4x4 map, even with 4 guys, is really interesting. I mean, it's Pickett's your tank. He's going to get lots of dice. He's going to block, but you got to block in the right place, and you've got to be able to support that. And at the same time, someone's got to do some damage.
It's true.
And so I just think that now that they got it all out, and that's the problem. If you're going to buy it all, it's a big investment, but there's so much game in there.
There is. The one thing I was always kind of like on the fence about, and I think it got better as time went on, was like the when you do your event kind of in between with the card, right? Like the base set with the cards that you go through, I found them kind of like Like I found like getting to the actual battles seemed to be the big deal, like as you went along your journey.
Yeah.
But the cards to me in the core game, I was kind of like, yeah, they're fun. But for some reason it was like, they were, in my opinion, it was like kind of like they were trying to tie a narrative to your story, like as to what's happening in each thing. But it was so thin. It was kind of like the feeling you get with Gloomhaven, where it's like, here's this epic campaign, but we're only going to give you 2 paragraphs of text at the beginning. And you're like, wait a minute, why am I like that? Even bothers me to this day.
Random map encounter and then go.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, you need to have a little, not that you need to have like Madeira size.
I was going to say there's 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to go crazy, but it's like, I find having your story on a card is difficult to convey that you are like sold for the story kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's kind of like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of another game like that. I guess This War of Mine could be another one, although the overarching story is doom and gloom. But when you pull a card, even though it's simplistic text, it's usually just bad.
Yeah,
but they try to put some narrative in that, right?
Right.
A little bit.
I don't even read the cards. I just flip it over and
do it. Yeah.
And that's played it so often, like you just stop reading after a while.
Yeah.
No, it's just because it doesn't. Each one is a cute little, something that happens, but it isn't an overriding story like
it
Adam
does
said.
exist. Yeah.
They don't tie together. It ties with what's on the other side. So,
yes.
You're just, because you always have to make a choice between one of 2 things.
That I like a lot.
That ties to the front. Now, one thing I'll say is a lot of the newer stuff, especially with, I guess, Age of Tyranny, a lot of those cards now, the choices are a lot better as far as, there's some big differences in what you choose. You don't always just choose the one that gives you the most training points now. It's like, that's
a really good point. I remember specifically doing that at times. Look like you did. Skip the narrative text, skip everything, look at the bottom. Oh, those training points, I'll take those. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think at this point, I mean, we've Too Many Bones is the game of the year, which is amazing to say for a game from 2017. But in terms of the things that solo players are playing, I think this game won the hearts of solo gamers this year. And I was kidding about it, but I really feel like, it took the community a long time to wrap its mind around the complexity. And once
Yeah.
it did, it
Mhm.
unlocked a lot. So
You
you
know-
guys you haven't quite convinced me yet because it's a really expensive game. But
Yeah.
if it does land on my table, I will definitely take another look.
But I hear a lot of people talk about the price, and the argument they always get from the people who love the game is, I bet you got 4 games you probably wish you didn't have, and you could have this instead and have it all, and you'd have so much more.
I don't know what you're
to
talking
play.
about. I love everything.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna take a look at your shelves here.
I love my code names.
Yeah, why do you have 4 editions?
Wait, pictures, duet, and
Disney,
the
of course. You need to have Disney in there, right?
Disney for the kids. Absolutely.
That's true. That's true.
Now, the other one, would you call Cloudspire an adventure game, or is that just strictly tower defense?
I think it's a MOBA, like whatever, the
Yeah.
battle. It's
Yeah.
it's an arena game.
But that's another one of theirs that I backed it because I liked them. I knew nothing about it, and I had a lot of fun with that. And then again, that a lot of people bought Too Many Bones when they bought that one. It's just funny, the way they just
How did you like
reselling
Cloudspire,
it.
Adam?
I liked it. I liked it. I liked that they focused, like they had the book for solo play. Like that was cool. Like to
Yeah.
see it not just be like, read the rule book and a couple extra. I mean, you pretty much just play the game, but this was like a separate book. I was like, oh, that's like a love and attention. Like they realized pretty early on that the solo gaming community is a big chunk of interest on their side. So they were like, okay, we'll cater and make this thing. It's actually impressive because for a game like that, there's no reason that they had to do that. Like they could have easily pumped that game out the door and it would have been successful without the solo play option. But I think they just learned a lot that like people like me, good example.
Yeah.
I look at Kickstarter. I'm like, if it doesn't have solo play, I just don't buy
It's
it.
not happening.
Like
Right.
it's never going to happen. And it has to
Right.
be, there has to be a really special game for me to go, yeah, this is only worth it multiplayer. And that happens very rarely, like very rarely.
I can't think of the last one I bought that wasn't soloable.
Because it just gives you that like freedom to say, you know what, if I don't get to it, right away with friends or anything like that, I've always got the availability to throw it on my table and play it. And you can't lose with that. Then at least you feel like the money you've invested in Kickstarter could come back.
I think the Kickstarter pumping up the money of it is making people say, okay, I need this to have a good value proposition. And solo is going to give me a good value proposition. And all the things I thought about solo, this for losers. And I have no friends, blah, blah. That goes away quickly when you're spending $150 in a game. And you also don't want to be the guy that has like $150 game that you've never played. Because
it's true.
I can't tell you how many people have like War of the Rings, Star Wars Rebellion, these big honking games that they just can't get to, or Descent, or Star Wars Imperial Assault before the app, like these big games that they can't play. And now I can't even imagine even a game of Dwellings of Eldervale, like the big worker placement game has to have a solo rules. Anything that inches above like $70, $80, they has to have it. I can't think of unless it's like a big Eric Lang game, which he has like kind of a cachet. But for the most part, they all have to solo.
It's
now.
true.
Right. But think of this though. Think of this year. How many people have all these games that are great, Euros and all this stuff, and they can't get together with anybody because there's a pandemic, and they can't play them, or they can, some of them, but they're awful.
No, but I agree with you. It's definitely, for solo gaming, it's been one of the best years for probably new people coming into the hobby, or for the people, like you said, that always sat on the fence and were like, well, why would I bother? Like, what's my reason? What's pushing me to do that?
Right.
And now it's like, well, you've got your excuse now.
And I've heard so many people go, it's actually fun. And I've got games that I would rather play solo than with a group because you can finish the game. You can stop and start when you want. I mean,
you can take as much time as you want. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's one of the biggest things for me with solo play has always been just that control. Like, and maybe that makes me feel like a control freak, but it's just like when you play a game with other people and you play, especially it can be anything, campaign, Euro, whatever. I mean, a Euro is different because you're more going against each other straight up. But if you're playing an adventure game, it's tough sometimes because if you have one person who's really dominant at the table, you feel like by the time you're done a campaign, you're like, did I even make half these decisions, or was I just coaxed into half them? Whereas, if you sit down with Too Many Bones, you can be like, I chose this path and I chose this thing. Nobody had any say on anything. And that's kind of nice. I like that for some weird reason.
Well, okay. So, I mean, so 2020, right? I mean, we're ready to put it in the books. Like, we are ready to just like move on. We hear about
extend this episode by 3 hours next year.
Right? This is gonna be like a 4-part. I'm gonna have different people coming in. It's gonna be like next year. I think because we did preview at the beginning of the episode, so many, and a lot of them are coming around this table either because I've backed them, because they're review copies, or like there's so many. And then Adam is gonna continue to have just so much stuff. Actually, before we get to that the part though, like you have played games in 2020, adventure and otherwise. What would you say are like the 2 or 3 best that you've played this year?
Ooh, good question. You're gonna put me on the spot. Now I have to like go take a quick look so I don't forget.
Actually, is your answer before I get back to Adam? Kevin, is your answer Too Many Bones, or is there one that topped that for this year?
It's probably Too Many Bones. Remember, I told you I didn't have, because I had my daughter and 2 granddaughters living with us. So for 9 months of the year, I didn't have any space anymore. So I haven't played as much as I normally would.
And we are definitely talking about release games too, right?
Not release games, yes.
Pipe
not prototypes.
Not the pipe dream. Yeah, those don't count.
People with your prototypes. No, thank you.
To be totally honest, the one that like Too Many Bones is definitely in that camp. But I like I said, I haven't dove into Splice and Dice as much as I should yet. Sure. So I can't say that would be it. But I know that if I play it based on my love for the core game and Undertow and how much I played those to death, that as soon as I start playing Spice and Dice, I'm going to be doomed. So it's just, that's probably part of the reason why I haven't.
Community, another Too Many Bones playthrough.
It's probably going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the one that probably stuck out to me that I did give time to was Jaws of the Lion, because I do think that like the beast that is Gloomhaven, and you know, there's some people that they still play solo. They love the game, but it's just like, I don't want to play 99 scenarios. I just don't have time for that. So to know you could get through 20, like I'm pretty sure most people that own Gloomhaven have probably started and restarted campaigns that have made it to the 20th scenario, probably 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, 8, 9 times. So you've already beat Jaws of the Lion 8 times, essentially.
Yeah, I think you're describing me to a T.
Like that's just my feelings. But again, like, yeah, if I was to compare Gloomhaven to Too Many Bones, that would be, I think in terms of what I prefer to put on the table, I'd prefer Too Many Bones. Like if I was going to pick, but there's something about the card play in Gloomhaven that was brilliant. Like the fact they brought that in and didn't make it like a dice chucking typical. That just is what makes it special, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny that like a Target release is basically a lot of people's game of 2020 that won't even make a lot of lists because people are like, nope, that doesn't count. That's Gloomhaven. Get out of here.
Yep, that's true.
All right.
Yeah,
so I mean, we have a lot to look forward to next year. This year was great. That's why I wanted Kevin on here, because I know he was a Too Many Bones aficionado. Thank you so much, Adam, as well. I know you're a big fan, and we're looking forward to rolling solo, featuring a little bit more Too Many Bones. Do we have
more to come?
So do you have, how are you going to end the year? Are you going to end the year with mostly playthroughs? Are you going to give some top lists? How is rolling solo going to close things out?
I'm probably just going to do like right now I have my community doing like just games basically released in 2020 just as a community poll, and then I'll do my top 10 or top X list. I got to figure out how many I'm going to put in that list. Sure. I like doing it with a community too, because like it's kind of fun to see. Yeah, it's kind of, exactly. It's kind of fun to see like my choices, but then it's nice to see theirs because they all, you know, it fluctuates. And then
your community is like BG, Discord.
Right now, so I'm kind of mixed, but it's mainly on Facebook, and I have on Discord as well. But typically, I throw the polls up on Facebook. I have like a rolling solo Facebook community, and it's just easier there. Put a poll up and let it rip. And the cool thing with, or at least what I'm hoping to do at the very end of the year, is just do kind of an open season favorite solo game kind of thing, like what's everyone playing right now type thing, no matter what year it's from, whatever. So that'll be interesting to see.
And Kevin, is going to be more Too Many Bones. Do you have anything that you've got any shipping notifications on that you're looking forward to getting to the table?
I think Etherfields is supposed to be here soon, so
I can't wait.
Probably put that. I don't know.
I seriously can't wait.
Yeah, I've probably got other games I just haven't got back. I'm trying to think when the expansion for Sword and Sorcery. I don't think is coming. That might be soon. The Arcane Portal.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh shoot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't remember if they delayed that one or not.
When that comes, I'll fire that back up and play through that. For some reason, I was thinking that might make it before the end of the year.
So these are the games that I just to kind of note for how many people. I did not back Aeon's Trespass, but I did back Oathsworn. I did back Destinies. I did back Isofarian Guard. Carnival Zombie, second edition. Tainted Grail waiting for. Assassin's Creed, which I knew was going to take a long time. Waiting for that one. And a couple like Final Girl, the Hostage Negotiator remake. Frostpunk. I mean, what am I doing? My wife is going to kill me. Although I try to have a side job, like where I make a little bit of extra money, and I always spend money out of my side job. So that was a good couple of months where I had I was making a lot of money.
So you don't get shanked in the night.
And once I lost that job, I'm like, okay, you got to chill out with these things.
That's funny.
So we have all that to look forward to. Kevin, thank you so much for stopping by and giving your expertise on Too Many Bones. I know people are really excited. They're always excited to see you, Kevin. You have such a following, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff anytime, Jason.
And Adam from Rolling Solo, go ahead, hit up the Discord. Go ahead and hit up Facebook. The Rolling Solo is a YouTube channel. You recently passed a milestone too for subscribers, right?
Yep. 25,000, which doesn't make any sense to me.
That's awesome.
It's kind of crazy. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, we're talking about solo gaming, so I'm like, how does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, you were one of the real OGs, like leaning into it.
I don't know. I blame Mage Knight for ruining me.
Right.
That's what made Too Many Bones so much easier to learn. Is I played Mage Knight and I was like, oh, this rulebook's not so bad.
This was like a step down.
Yeah, it's like a step down. It's like this isn't so bad.
That's not so bad. Anyway, this was a ton of fun. We will not be strangers. I hope you guys enjoyed that shelf story. So until next time, this is Jason reminding you: if you change your mind, you change the world. So until next time, later, everybody.
See you guys.
See ya.
All right, now.